Okay, good morning everyone. Okay, this is the online tutorial for essay question 5 from your SA2. Now, this question is a 25 marks question and you really have to get used to the idea of doing 25 marks question because they can really be easier. Okay, or something that you might feel more comfortable with doing. Alright, because maybe the content you're more familiar, okay? So in the A levels, there have been years where 25 marks question take up 3 out of 6 of the essay questions available for you to do. Okay, so definitely you have a very high chance of ending up with doing a 25 mark essay question in the A levels. You must get used to the idea of doing it, okay? And it's not as difficult as it looks because if you think about this 25 marks essay question, it's actually divided into 2 parts. It's just like a normal 2-part question for this question, okay? So explain what is meant by these 3 different kinds of efficiency. Is the first part of the question. Boys and girls, just to let you know, I'm thinking aloud now like a student, okay? This is the first part and I will answer this first part here before I address the second part about discussing the extent to which the openness of an economy can make a firm more efficient. Alright, so other than that, I will not focus so much on the first part because I believe that most of you already know the meanings behind the different kinds of efficiencies. You just need to go and revise again. And well, for the second part, I'm going to continue the thinking aloud. Well, discuss the extent. Okay, usually if you want to say that, hey, it's only to some extent, likely that it's only to some extent, okay, then I think you need to bring in other factors, other factors that might also contribute to making firms more efficient. Okay, so you may say that yes, to some extent, the openness makes the firm more efficient. No, but it might cause it to become more inefficient instead. That's another way of arguing it, right? Yes, it might cause it to be more efficient. No, it might make it more inefficient instead. And this is what most of you answered for the exams, and that is good. But you missed out on the third part. You need to address the word the extent, okay? The extent may not be so great. There might be other factors, boys and girls. Always try to bring in other factors when you see that the command word is extent. To what extent? Okay, other factors that can contribute to making a firm more efficient, and therefore openness is not the biggest factor. Okay, so I'm not going to explain much about the 3 different kinds of efficiencies, just to highlight, however, that there is a firm's point of view, okay, where productive efficiency is attained when the firm minimizes the cost of producing any given level of output in the long run. Okay, so what they mean here is that if the firm produces at Q0, this is the least possible average cost it will incur. Okay, if it produces at Q0. Okay, so it is productive efficient because at Q0 it is producing at the least possible average cost. And if let's say the firm is producing at Q2 and this point on the RAC curve is the least possible average cost that it can incur. Alright, so any point on the RAC is considered productively efficient, okay, because at each level of output, this is the lowest possible average cost. At this level of output, this is the lowest possible average cost, and so on. Okay, so every point on the RAC curve represents the lowest possible average cost at the corresponding level of output. Okay, now that is from the firm's point of view, and I would just like to highlight, however, from the society's point of view, only Q1 is productively efficient. Only this one at the minimum point of the LRAC curve is the firm considered productively efficient from society's viewpoint. That means it must be at the minimum. Okay, so in other words, from society's point of view, only if the firm produces at the minimum point of the LRAC curve at Q1, only is it considered to be productively efficient. Okay, and the firm will be producing at the minimum efficient scale. All right. So from here to here, the firm kind of enjoys internal EOS. From here to here, it will enjoy internal diseconomies of scale, right? So Q1 would obviously be the point where, from society's point of view, productive efficiency is achieved. Okay, it is producing at the minimum efficient scale. Now, I'm not going to go on about allocative efficiency because you should know this by now. Okay, but just to highlight that when you explain allocative efficiency, all right, you must draw the graph and you must say that at Q1, you must use, at Q1, you must, go up to the dotted line upwards. Okay, extend the dotted line upwards. And you must say at Q1, P is greater than MC, right? Which is exactly what they wrote. They say that at Q1, the price is greater than the opportunity cost of producing the last unit of the good. So the price, the valuation of the good, the consumer values the good so high, much higher than the marginal cost of producing it. Therefore more should be produced because the valuation is so high relative to the cost of producing it. Okay, more should be produced. And therefore we say that right now, currently, there is an underproduction of the good. All right. Okay, if you look at this, at Q1, P is greater than MC. P represents the consumer's valuation of the last unit of output, and this valuation is so high, so much more than the cost of producing the last unit of output. Okay, and therefore, currently we would say that there is underproduction. More should be produced because consumers' valuation is so much higher than the marginal cost of producing it. Okay, at Q2, on the other hand, you will see that the MC is greater than the P. At Q, you hit the demand curve, you get the P. MC is greater than P, which means that P is less than MC. P is less than MC. Consumer's valuation of the good is so much lesser than the cost of producing it, which means, the consumers are not valuing it that highly relative to the cost. Okay, the consumers don't value it that high relative to the cost. Why are you producing so much of it? You should produce less. Okay, so currently we say that there is an overproduction. All right, so, and this is something that you must do. Okay, at Q2, okay, P less than MC, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and you elaborate. At Q1, okay, P greater than MC, okay, there's an underproduction, blah, blah, blah. All right, to show that at these 2 points, Q1, there's an underproduction. Okay, at Q2, there is an overproduction, which means that at QE is the one where there is allocative efficiency. It is the output where the right quantity is being produced. There is allocative efficiency. Okay, now I'm not going to elaborate on dynamic because I think that everyone knows. Okay, please, I think it's okay. You just look through the full set of answers which will be given to you probably in a few days or a week's time. Okay, part 2, discuss the extent to which the openness of an economy makes the firm more efficient. So remember just now I broke the question up into 2 parts. Now I'm addressing the second part. Okay, and I told you that yes, you need to tell me that openness makes it more efficient. That is one part of it. No, it makes it more inefficient, not good for the firm, for efficiency, right? And thirdly, you need to give me other factors due to the word extent, because it's a to what extent question. So when you say that openness is not the biggest factor that makes it more efficient, then that begs the question, right? Well, there must be other factors that can make the firm more efficient. And what are these other factors? Okay, so now let's do some thinking aloud again with regards to openness of an economy. Openness of an economy is not openness of a market structure, it's different. Okay, openness of the economy, I would associate it to a word. One word will come to my mind, and it's basically the idea of globalization. Now, you don't need to use the word globalization in the essay, but you must get the idea that when they are talking about openness, it's a bit similar to globalization. They are talking about openness in terms of trade. Openness which will allow the increasing the free flow of goods and services related to trade. Okay, short-term and long-term capital. Now, I told you that this term, we will try to make linkages across the syllabus. And can I ask you a question? What exactly is short-term capital movements? Short-term capital movement is actually about inflow or outflow of hot money. Short-term capital movement is about the inflow and outflow of hot money. Hot money is considered short-term capital because it's so volatile. It can leave any moment, right? Long-term capital, on the other hand, refers to FDI, foreign direct investment. So boys and girls, you can see that this question is actually a microeconomic question, but it requires you to have some macroeconomic understanding, because all these concepts are concepts that you've learned under macroeconomics, right? But ultimately, you can see that for this question, globalization, which is what the openness of the economy is about, and this is a macro concept, basically affects your microeconomy, which is linked to the idea of allocative, productive efficiency, and so on. So a macro concept can affect microeconomics, okay? And so openness to trade, capital movements, and labor movements. So these are certain things that we'll think about. When we think about trade, we'll think about imports, we'll think about exports. Okay, most of you just talked about imports, but you can think about exports as well. That with openness to trade, the firm will be exporting more. And how is that going to affect its efficiency? Think about it one by one, okay? Now, you can also think about hot money, you can think about FDI, and you can think about the labor movements. That means the inflow or outflow of labor, right? Due to migration and all that. Okay, so my thesis is that the openness can make a firm more efficient. Okay, I don't want to elaborate so much on this. I think we've gone through this before. But basically, when the economy is open, we can talk about openness to imports. Open to imports coming in. Okay, and you must use the word imports, you must use the word imports, they're open to imports, and therefore, okay, absence of trade barriers allow more imports to enter the domestic market. This will increase the degree of competition of markets, in particular the monopolistic or oligopolistic market. So we just use one example. Okay, let's talk about, let's say, Apple. Okay, Apple in the US. All right. Okay, I don't want to elaborate so much on this, but basically, what happens is that Apple's revenue curves were originally the ones in red. Okay, and what happened is that because of the increase in competition, demand for the revenue curves will become more elastic. Okay, and eventually, okay, this is what happens. The revenue curves become more elastic and they shift to the left, right? Because the demand for Apple's products will fall, demand will shift to the left, shifts left. Demand for Apple's products will shift left, it will fall. Okay, and the second idea is that demand becomes more elastic because there is an increase in the number of competitors, right? Because now Samsung, okay, because consumers now have more choices, they will switch from buying Apple phones to Samsung phones. Demand for Apple phones will fall and also become more elastic. and it's all reflected in the graph. The demand falls, it will shift to the left, demand becomes more elastic. Okay, and you will see, boys and girls, I will not explain everything in detail again, but basically you must talk about two things. That number one, the size of the deadweight loss will fall. That's number one. And number two, the gap, and this is something that some of you missed out, that the gap between P and MC will get smaller, right? Okay, it will get smaller, okay, because there is less allocative inefficiency, right? If there's less allocative inefficiency, the size of the deadweight loss will fall and the gap between the P and MC will get smaller. Okay, since P greater than MC is the case where there's allocative efficiency. If you can reduce the gap between P and MC, it would therefore mean that, okay, the firm gets less allocative inefficient if you can reduce the gap between P and MC. All right. Now, I won't go through this anymore, okay, but I would like to talk about the other points. Okay, the marker actually commented that a lot of people wrote this essay as if the whole the question was about monopoly or an oligopoly, but that is not the case. Okay, there shouldn't be so much reference to that. Okay, even if you refer maybe at most only for this graph to say that Apple is like was at first a monopoly, and then because of Samsung, there are more competitors, the demand curve shifts left and becomes more elastic. That is the maximum reference that you should have made to monopoly and oligopoly and NPC and so on, because this question is not about how the monopoly changes to become an oligopoly and so on. It is not about that. Okay, so it's the emphasis, is how you put things across. Okay, now with greater competition from imports, also what happens is that firms become less complacent, right? Okay, they'll become less complacent. There'll be increased competitive pressure to force them to seek more cost-efficient methods of production to stay relevant. Okay, yeah, so for example, there will be less, okay, we can talk about less overstaffing. Okay, because at first they were complacent, they didn't bother about reducing their costs. Okay, so maybe they had too many staff and they didn't bother to reduce their costs. Maybe they built a lot of expensive buildings. Okay, but all these things are not required, right? They're being X inefficient, but all this competition will force them to become less X inefficient. Okay, now let me go on to the antithesis. I think that we need to like really put on our thinking caps and think about it. There are so many other points that requires you to be original, requires you to have some personal voice. Think of other points that can answer the question and that can, may not be points that I have taught you before, but you thought of something and you can connect to the question. You just write it down as long as it makes sense. All right. Okay, so this is one possible very creative point. Okay, so in the exam on the spot, you try to think of creative points that directly answer the question. It is possible, however, that with greater competition, okay, the firms find it difficult to survive, and therefore they begin to merge. Okay, there are a lot of mergers and acquisitions. They start getting bigger. They start combining themselves. Okay, they start merging and they start getting bigger. All right. And they start getting bigger, okay, it means that they have more market power. Okay, they have more market power. And with more market power, it's almost like they become like more oligopolistic or more monopolistic, right? More market power. And therefore, in such a case, that we more allocative inefficiency again, right? So be creative about it. Don't always think of the same old points. This is something really out of the box and would definitely impress the examiner. Okay, that with greater competition, it forces firms to merge in order to survive, and that can cause them to have higher market power. Okay, It might even create more oligopolies. Okay, it can cause greater allocative inefficiency. All right. So this is a very good example that in 1999, what happened was that it was a very painful time for some of the banks in Singapore which underwent consolidation. So what happened was that some of the domestic banks, remember this example because I think it's a very good example in Singapore for mergers and acquisitions in Singapore. They merged to attain a larger market share so that they can better compete with the foreign banks, and our government actually supported this idea because they knew that our banks are small, they need to merge, they need to consolidate so that they can compete with the foreign banks. And it was a very painful time in Singapore because there were many people who became unemployed in the process, because with all these mergers they will get rid of the unwanted staff that they think they don't really need. Okay, and therefore there was some amount of unemployment that came about due to this merger. Okay, so just remember the DBS POSB merger. Okay, they used to be separate banks but they merged, and the UOB OUB merger. Okay, so as I said just now, there'll be greater market power, right? Greater ability to raise the prices, which may result in greater allocative inefficiency. And again, you can talk about the gap between P and MC becomes wider, right? And you can even talk about the deadweight loss. The size of the deadweight loss becomes larger. And obviously, boys and girls, don't need to draw the graph again. It's okay because you've drawn it just now. It's kind of similar. Now, another one would be that of productive efficiency. You see, productive efficiency is about it's mainly about how you are producing. You want to produce at the lowest average cost. And you see, with expansion, boys and girls, think about it. With expansion, with openness to trade, if you're able to sell more exports, you sell more exports, means that you're producing more. Okay, you need to produce more. Okay, the firm needs to produce more. And in other words, okay, need to produce more. And what happens is that initially, okay, when they produce more, they can enjoy EOS, right? When they produce more, they can enjoy EOS initially, but up to a certain point, they may start to suffer from diseconomies of scale, which may increase their average cost, and which would mean that they are more productive inefficient because their average cost is increasing. So let me go through this part. When the economy is more open, they will venture, they expand overseas. Yes, it's possible that they enjoy internal economies of scale. Okay, that would be very possible. Okay, but it's also possible that they may overexpand. Okay, to the point where they start to suffer from internal diseconomies of scale. Okay, staff problems may surface, workers feel alienated, thus having lower productivity, causing the average cost to go up, causing internal diseconomies of scale. Okay, number 6, more competition from imports. I think a lot of you mentioned this, which is why I'm not going to go through this in detail, but the idea that with more competition, there's an erosion of profits for the firms, which means that they're less able to innovate. They become more dynamically inefficient because they have less supernormal profits to fund their innovations, their innovative efforts. Okay, and you know, boys and girls, I've said before that the 4 marks that you get for evaluation can also come from clever comments that you insert throughout the essay. Okay, you can say that on the other hand, a more open economy would allow domestic firms access to a larger export market. They have higher revenue and profits. And if they have higher profits, they have more financial resources to carry out their innovation. I repeat, with international trade, they are selling more exports. They earn more revenue and more profits. They have more financial resources to carry out their innovation, to fund their innovation, and therefore, okay, they might be more dynamic, efficient. Okay, so I evaluate by saying, however, I know that I said that the openness could cause it to become more dynamically inefficient. However, it can be more dynamic efficient if this happens. Okay, and so this is my evaluative point, and it can be considered as part of the 4 marks that you get for overall evaluation. Okay, and I thought that this is pretty good as well, that with greater competition from imports, there'll be wastage of resources on excessive advertising. Well, it's just a minor point, but I think it shows that you are thinking. Okay, so when there's wastage of resources, of course it's inefficient. Doesn't really come under any of the 4 efficiencies, but it's just an additional point. Okay, because you're wasting resources, it is just not efficient if you're wasting resources on excessive advertising, okay, and so on. All right, now remember I told you under the antithesis you have to tell me one more other factor. You look here, 1 point needed, one other factor that can make a firm more efficient. Okay, and one possible point is that of government policies. Just give me any point, that any other factor, any point that can think of, which is why I said that for econs, to some extent, yes, there are answers that we have gone through before, but you have to be able to think on the spot of creative ideas that can answer the question. And in this case, government policy can be a creative point, can be a point that is out of the box, that can make a firm more efficient. Okay, so for example, let's talk about in the real world. Okay, Singapore, okay, and all these examples, please go and memorize. Singapore's productivity and innovation credit scheme. Okay, it's an example of how they push firms to innovate, which increase their dynamic efficiency. Okay, and also because they become more cost efficient, right? Okay, they become more cost efficient, their average cost is going to drop, and this would mean their productive efficiency will increase. Okay, and so you need to think about how to connect your new creative ideas to link them back to efficiency. Okay, another example is that of price regulations. Do you remember I've taught you before about MC pricing, where the government forces the firm to price where P equals to MC, because they think, hey, monopolists, you are charging such a high price, you're charging an excessively high price. Please lower your price. Please charge where P is equals to MC, and that will allow the firm to achieve allocative efficiency. So can you see that governments can have a very big effect on a firm's efficiency? They force them to charge where P equals to MC, there will be allocative efficiency. Okay, and the point on protectionism, you read it when you get the notes, okay? You see, boys and girls, you must begin to start writing an overall evaluation, because you're going to miss out on a lot of marks if you don't. Okay, Cambridge has commented that an introduction needs to be written. Okay, it is not good that students are not writing their introductions and their conclusions. Conclusions need to be written. If not, it is not a proper essay. Take some time to pen a good conclusion. Okay, on the whole, there is some kind of closing up of the essay where the author talks about how the openness does have a dominant influence. To quite a large extent, it does affect the efficiency. Okay. For example, the openness, right, can affect the barriers to entry. So when you're open to exports, it means that there'll be less barriers to entries in the various markets. There'll be more sellers, and that is of course going to affect the level of efficiency in the market. Is greatly tied to the idea of barriers to entry. Okay, so you're value adding to the essay. You're writing things that you did not write before. Even if certain things are repeated, you must value add by adding in certain new points. Okay? However, what is clear is whether the openness less clear, sorry, what is less clear is whether the openness always makes the firm more efficient. And this would of course depend on certain factors, right? On the nature of the product, whether it is a unique product, which will affect the market structure. For example, if the firm sells a unique product that has no close substitutes, okay, for example, medication for diabetes like insulin with no close substitutes. Okay, even with the openness of the economy and the competition from imports, there might be very little impact on the efficiency. Okay, because so what if you're open? Okay, all those imports are not close substitutes at all. People are not going to buy them. Your demand curve will not change. It will not shift to the left to a large extent. It will not become more elastic. It's not going to affect the allocative efficiency at all. If you are a monopoly, if you are selling a good that has no close substitutes. All right, and therefore, boys and girls, this is the end of this online tutorial. Okay, please make sure that you write. I hope that you've written your notes properly. Okay, thanks.